There are certain type of person society never quite understands. They are not loud, they are not constantly busy, they don't feel the need to be everywhere all the time. They are the ones who feel a sense of relief when plans get cancelled. The ones who genuinely look forward to a quiet evening at home. The ones who don't feel bored in silence, and for a long time we have labeled them wrong. We call them lazy, antisocial, unmotivated, missing out. But psychology tells a very different story. Because for some people, staying home isn't avoidance, it's regulation. It's how their mind resets, it's how their nervous system stays balanced, it's how they stay functional in a world that rarely slows down. If you have ever felt more energized after being alone than after being around people, if crowds drain you instead of excite you, if your idea of a perfect night involves comfort, familiarity, and zero pressure, this video isn't about changing you, it's about explaining you. Today, we are breaking down the psychology of people who love staying at home, not from a judgmental angle, not from a productivity angle, but from a human behavior perspective. Because once you understand what's really happening in the mind, staying home stops looking like withdrawal and starts looking like self knowledge. This sets identity, curiosity, safety without copying your original phrasing. Most people assume energy works the same way for everyone. That if you like people, being around them should automatically feel good. That if you are tired after socializing, something must be wrong. But psychology doesn't support that idea. Human energy isn't emotional, it's physiological. Some nervous systems are stimulated by interaction, conversation wakes them up, noise sharpens their focus, being around others feels activating. For other nervous system, the exact same input does the opposite. Every interaction, even enjoyable ones, slowly pulls energy away. Not because the person is shy, not because they are insecure, not because they dislike people, but because their brain processes social information more deeply. Facial expressions, tone shifts, micro reactions, unspoken expectations, all of it gets processed in real time, and that level of processing costs energy. That's why someone can leave a party smiling and still feel completely exhausted afterward. Staying home in that case isn't about avoiding people. It's about giving the brain a break from constant interpretation. At home, there's no performance, no monitoring, no adjusting yourself to fit the room. Your mind doesn't have to stay on. And when the mind finally turns off, that background processing energy slowly comes back. That's why some people don't feel refreshed by social time. They feel restored by solitude. Not because they lack social skills, but because their system needs quiet to recalibrate. This part reframes staying home as nervous system management, not personality flaw. Psychologists have a simple way of explaining this difference. Every brain has an optimal level of stimulation, a point where it feels focused, calm, and alert at the same time. Some people need more input to reach that point, more sound, more interaction, more movement. Others reach that same balance with far less. When stimulation goes past that point, the experience changes. Instead of excitement, it turns into fatigue. Instead of enjoyment, it becomes pressure. Instead of connection, it starts to feel like work. This is why two people can be in the same environment and have completely opposite reactions. One person feels energized by the buzz of a crowded room. Another feels mentally scattered after 20 minutes. Neither reaction is wrong, they are just responding to different nervous system thresholds. For people who love staying home, quiet isn't boring, it's efficient. Low stimulation allows their thoughts to organize themselves, it gives their attention somewhere to land, it reduces the constant background noise their brain has to filter out. And that's the key point most people miss. These individuals aren't running away from life, they are protecting clarity. Home offers predictability, and predictability lowers cognitive load. When your environment is familiar, your brain doesn't have to stay on alert. It doesn't need to read faces, manage impressions, or adapt to shifting dynamics. It can finally rest without shutting down. That's why staying home often feels grounding rather than isolating. Beyond stimulation, there's another psychological layer that makes staying home so appealing: control. Outside your home, very little is under your control. You don't control how loud a place is, how long an interaction lasts, what people expect from you, how quickly plans change. Your brain stays alert because it has to. It's constantly adjusting, reading the room, responding appropriately, managing impressions. Even when nothing bad happens, that vigilance adds up. At home, that vigilance disappears. You choose the lighting, the temperature, the pace of the evening, whether there is silence or sound. That level of environmental control sends a powerful signal to the nervous system. You are safe, you don't need to monitor everything. For people who are sensitive, reflective, or mentally active, that signal is incredibly regulating. It's not about comfort in the lazy sense, it's about psychological safety. Home removes unpredictability, and unpredictability is one of the biggest sources of mental fatigue. That's why some people feel calmer the moment they close the door behind them. Their shoulders drop, their breathing slows, their mind stops racing ahead. Not because they dislike people, but because they finally don't have to perform. Home becomes the only place where they are allowed to exist without explanation. And for certain minds, that freedom isn't optional, it's essential. One of the biggest misunderstandings about people who love staying home is the idea that they are inactive. That if you're not out socializing or visibly busy, you must be wasting time. But psychologically, that couldn't be further from the truth. Solitude isn't empty time, it's uninterrupted processing time. When external stimulation drops, the brain doesn't shut off. It actually does some of its most complex work. This is when reflection happens. When ideas connect, when emotions get sorted instead of suppressed. That's why research consistently shows that people who are comfortable being alone tend to score higher in creativity, self awareness, and problem solving. Their minds aren't constantly reacting, they are integrating. For these people, staying home often looks like thinking without distraction, exploring ideas without interruption, letting thoughts unfold instead of rushing them. This kind of mental space is hard to find in noisy environments, and it's not accidental that many breakthroughs, creative, emotional, or personal, happen in quiet environments, quiet moments rather than crowded ones. The world celebrates visible activity, but growth doesn't always make noise. For people wired for depth, stillness isn't laziness. It's where clarity forms, it's where insight sharpens, and it's often where they reconnect with themselves without anyone else's expectations layered on top. Modern culture has a very specific idea of what a good life looks like. It's visible, it's busy, it's documented. We are constantly shown images of people being out, traveling, socializing, networking, making memories. And without realizing it, we absorb a quiet message. If you're not participating publicly, you must be falling behind. This creates pressure, especially for people who genuinely prefer staying home. They start questioning themselves: am I wasting my time? Am I being antisocial? Am I missing something everyone else seems to enjoy? But psychology tells us something important here. Humans don't just seek happiness, they seek belonging. And when a culture celebrates only one way of living, and deviation from it can feel like a personal failure. For people who love staying home, the issue isn't their preference, it's the mismatch between their needs and the dominant narrative. The truth is, being out all the time doesn't automatically equal fulfillment, and staying in doesn't automatically equal loneliness. But because staying home doesn't produce visible proof, no photos, no stories, no social currency, it's often misunderstood as emptiness. In reality, it's simple, less performative. And for certain minds, a life that doesn't need constant performance isn't smaller, it's more sustainable. At this point, there's an important distinction we need to make because not everyone who stays home is doing it for the same reason. For some people, staying home is a choice. It restores them, it clears their head, it helps them feel like themselves again. But for others, staying home isn't peaceful. It feels heavy, it feels like the outside world takes more energy than they have available. Like every interaction requires effort they can't quite access. This is where things get complicated. Psychologically, there's a difference between chosen solitude and forced isolation. Chosen solitude feels grounding, you feel fuller afterward, more centered, more like yourself. Forced isolation feels constricting, you feel smaller, more disconnected, less capable over time. The behavior can look the same from the outside, staying in, declining plans, keeping to yourself. But internally, the experience is completely different. That's why the question isn't, do you stay home a lot? The real question is, how do you feel when you do? If staying home gives you clarity, calm, and a sense of balance, that's not a problem to fix. But if staying home slowly makes your world feel narrower, if it starts to feel like avoidance instead of rest, that's a signal worth paying attention to. Not with judgment, not with shame, just with honesty. Because understanding the difference helps you respond with care instead of forcing yourself into a lifestyle that doesn't fit. For people who genuinely enjoy staying home, something interesting happens internally. When the outside world gets quieter, their inner world becomes more alive. They don't rely on constant stimulation because their mind already has depth. Thoughts unfold naturally, curiosity sustains itself, time doesn't feel empty, it feels spacious. This is why staying home can feel satisfying instead of lonely. There's room to notice small things, the rhythm of a routine, the comfort of familiar words, the way attention moves without being pulled in 10 directions at once. Psychologically, this kind of environment supports internal regulation. There's no need to perform, no need to react, no need to manage impressions. That absence of pressure allows people to reconnect with their own pace. And pace matters more than most people realize. When your environment constantly moves faster than your mind prefers, you start feeling out of sync with yourself. Staying home corrects that. It's not about hiding from others, it's about staying aligned with how your attention actually works. That's why people who love staying home often develop strong inner narratives. They think deeply, they notice patterns, they reflect instead of react. And because their satisfaction comes from internal coherence rather than external validation, they don't feel the same urgency to be everywhere. Their contentment is quieter, but it's not shallow, it's rooted. Psychology has a term that helps explain this pattern. It's called low stimulation preference. People with this preference don't need constant novelty to feel engaged. They don't need frequent social reinforcement to feel valid. They don't need to fill every moment with activity. Their baseline sense of satisfaction is already relatively stable. That's why they can enjoy repetition without feeling stuck. Why a familiar routine feels grounding instead of boring. Why rewatching a favorite show or returning to the same quiet space can feel restorative. This doesn't mean they lack ambition or curiosity, it means their motivation works differently. Instead of being driven by external excitement, they are driven by internal alignment. They feel best when their actions match their values, not when they match expectations. And this is where misunderstandings often happen. From the outside, choosing to stay home can look like opting out of life, but internally, it often feels like opting into something more sustainable. Less noise, less comparison, less pressure to keep up. People with low stimulation preference don't feel deprived by having fewer plans. They feel relieved, their energy isn't spread thin across constant interaction, it's concentrated. And that concentration allows them to go deeper in thought, in creativity, in understanding themselves. They don't need more, they need enough. And once they have it, they are content staying right where they are. So, when someone says they love staying home, they are not saying they dislike people. They are not saying they lack ambition. They are not saying they have given up on life. They are saying something much quieter. They are saying they understand how their mind works. They know when stimulation turns into noise. They know when connection turns into effort. They know when rest is no longer optional. And instead of pushing against that knowledge, they have learned to respect it. That kind of awareness isn't common. Most people are taught to override their signals, to say yes when their body says no, to keep going when their mind needs stillness. People who choose staying home are often doing the opposite. They are listening, they are choosing environments that support their nervous system instead of constantly challenging it. That doesn't make them smaller, it makes them aligned. If staying home helps you feel clearer, calmer, and more yourself, that's not something to apologize for. It's for information. And information, when used honestly, leads to better choices. Not louder ones, not more impressive ones, better ones. So the real question isn't whether staying home is good or bad, it's whether you are living in a way that matches how you actually function or how you think you're supposed to. Let me know in the comments, do you genuinely enjoy staying home or do you feel pressure to enjoy a life that doesn't quite fit you? And if you want more psychology that helps you understand yourself instead of trying to fix yourself, you are in the right place.